All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sergeant Droll. This is your introduction to crew serve weapons. So, this being the transition point from the platoon pure package into the platoon supported, right? So, really, the end state of this package is the ability to properly task, the ability to assess the effects and adjust those effects accordingly of all the crew served weapons organic to the infantry. Okay, so as we go throughout this, um, just for everyone's clarification, we'll be going over the type of cruiser weapons that we have, some of the characteristics of them. We're not going to lean too heavy into machine guns because you guys will get the core competencies classes on those following this one. But mainly the task organization or the location of where you're going to find those crew serve weapons within the infantry model task organization based off the TE, right? So the who, the where, and the what is the end state of this class. All right, if you don't think that this is important for any reason, this is still testable on your phase 3 exam, so I encourage you all to take notes, type questions into the chat, or come to room 203 in Gonzales Hall and talk with any of the NCOs here about any questions, considerations, concerns you may have. All right, so we got some 240 Bravos, Mark 19 grenade machine guns, M2A1 50 cal heavy machine guns, M224 60mm lightweight mortar systems, M252 81s, Mark 153 SMAs, looking to transition to the Mod 2 relatively soon, maybe the Gustav here in the near future. M98 Alpha 1 Javelin, the M41 Saber or TOW, M40 A6 sniper rifle, just a different chassis. Sergeant Hughes will talk to you guys about that. M110 SAS. We got some M107s. And that's pretty much it, okay? So that's the what, and we'll get into capabilities, limitation, specs here in the future, but we're going to talk about where these are all located using the infantry TO, okay? So what you see here is a basic breakdown of what an infantry TO relatively looks like, okay? When I say relatively, we base everything off the TE. However, based off the mission set for a ground combat element, whether it be on an SP MAGTF, MU, UDP, whatever they may be doing, they may deviate from this slightly. However, this is the basic breakdown that it all originates from. So we see the battalion, H&S company, scout sniper platoon, sometimes being co-located with them. Other times you may see them with the weapons company. That just depends, right? Then within the 3 rifle companies or line companies, as we've come to call them, you have 3 platoons in each rifle company, rifle platoons, and 1 weapons platoon for each rifle company. Adjacent to that, we have the 1 weapons company per infantry battalion, broken down into the 3 respective platoons that you see that we'll talk about today: heavy guns platoon, 81s platoon, and the anti-armor platoon. Okay, so that weapons platoon, right? 1 weapons platoon per each line company is broken down into 3 sections. Right? We have the machine gun section, the mortar section, and the assault section. Who's in charge of those rifle companies is that Captain 0302 as the CO. The First Lieutenant 0302 is the weapons platoon commander, and the gunnery sergeant 0369 is the weapons platoon sergeant. So what you're going to be tested on and what right looks like is what you'll see on the screen. However, just know that you're rarely, I won't say rarely, but it's not uncommon to have a second lieutenant as a platoon commander, a corporal, sergeant, even sometimes a lance corporal as a platoon sergeant, and then everything breaking down from there. Okay, but this is what it's supposed to be. Okay, that medium machine gun section, right, with 6 MT40 Bravos is broken down into 22 Marines. All right, so a medium machine gun section has 1 section leader, 3 squad leaders, and then 6 machine gun teams. So if we look at that, each squad of machine guns is 2 240 Bravos, 1 squad leader, 2 team leaders, 2 gunners, and 2 ammo marines. So respectively, 3 of those squads together with a section leader equates to 22 marines in that section with 6 T-40 Bravos. Who's in charge of that? Again, Staff Sergeant 0369 ideally being that section leader, and the Sergeant 0331s being the squad leaders, Corporal 0331s being the team leaders. All right, Lance Corporals, PFCs, Gunners, and Ammo Marines. I was a PFC section leader for 6.5 years, so yeah, that is not, well, PFC then Lance, so not necessarily always going to be the case, but this is, again, what right looks like. All right, so capabilities, specs, these are good things to already kind of know, but you'll get classes on these right after this one, so don't sweat it. All right, now we're going to talk about the mortar section, right? This is the 60 section within that weapons platoon. So the breakdown is going to be 3 M224 60mm mortar systems, right? Broken down into 3 squads, each squad having 3 Marines per squad, that squad leader / gunner, the A gunner as well as the ammo bearer, and then obviously led by that section leader. So ideally, again, Staff Sergeant 369 is the section leader. The Sergeant 0341s are the squad leaders, gunners, and then those Lance Corporals, PFCs making up the A gunners and ammo man billets. All right, so again, 3 of those 60s tubes in the section. You're looking at a max effective range of 3490 when employed from a conventional manner. Okay, 1340 from handheld. Again, charge 1 is about as high as we want to go from handheld using that M8 base plate. It looks like a little rectangle piece of Sicilian pizza, if you will. That's as far as we can reach with assault mortars. All right, ammunition available. We have HE, which we can adjust to point, prox, and near surface, as well as delay, depending on the actual dotage of that munition. We can also provide illumination as well as the white phosphorus. Okay, so really 3 primary missions in 60s you're looking at is the HE, illumination, and Willie P. So max rate before catastrophic failure will occur in the weapon system is 30 rounds per minute for 4 minutes. All right, before that tube will incur a catastrophic failure. We can provide a sustained rate of 20 rounds a minute indefinitely. All right, I'm now going to turn it over to
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sergeant Korea, and today I will be teaching you guys your assault section in the part of CSW. So first, we're going to begin with what is an assaultman. The infantry assaultman employs rockets and the anti-personnel optical breaching system, known as the APOBs, and demolitions. We provide rocket fire against fortified positions and light-skinned vehicles in support of the rifle squads, platoons, and companies within the infantry battalion. So essentially what we do is, as assaultmen, we go ahead and employ some demolitions. We employ APOBs to go ahead and defeat those breaching those obstacles, and we also employ demolitions. All right, organization of the assault section, right? So there's 16 Marines per section, right? You'll have that section leader. You have 5 Marines per squad, 2 teams per squad, and 2 Marines per team, right? So within each squad, you'll have that squad leader, right? Those 2 teams, which is 2 Marines per team, which gives you that 5 total. And in total, in that section, you're going to have 3 squads, right? And that total number is going to give you 16 Marines per that section. All right, so who's in charge in the assault section? All right, so we're going to begin with the 0351 section leader, which ideally would be your sergeant. Now, these numbers here aren't going to reflect what you see in the fleet. Ideally, you want that sergeant 0351 to be that section leader, but sometimes you'll get that corporal, or in some of that special occasions, you'll get that lance corporal 0351 who will be that section leader. All right, second, we're going to move on into the squad leader / team leader position, which will be ran by a corporal. That 0351 corporal is going to be that squad leader / team leader. All right, and then you have your lance corporals and the lance corporals who are going to be your team leaders / gunners. They're going to be the ones employing the actual rocket, the actual Mark 153 small. And then you have your lance corporals and PFCs who are also either going to be those gunners as well. All right, here we have a little slide of actual, and if you look at the top top right corner we have some mechanical breaching. Top left corner we have the actual APOD being employed. Bottom left corner we have some sort of explosive breaching, and in the bottom right corner we have someone employed the actual Mark 153 Mod 0. All right, moving into the weapon system that we employ as a Soulman. Is the weapon that we employ is the Mark 153 SMA Mod 2. All right, prior to us actually updating this, we taught the Mod 0. Now the Mod 2, all it really is, we remove the spotting rifle and replaced it with a micro laser rangefinder, or the MLRF, as you can see in the diagram. All right, we removed the RCO and we put a light weapon thermal sight, the LW2S. All it really is a PAS 13 or 13 Golf. All it gives you the capability to have thermal sight, so you can use that night engagement and day engagement, right? Our iron sights were changed from actual metal iron sights to flip up Magpul sights, and then you have a two-button remote that actually controls the MLRF, which then transfers that data into the actual light weapon thermal sight. All right, so SMAW stands for shoulder launched multi-purpose assault weapon. All right, moving on. So the SMAW, what is the Mark 153 SMAW Mod 2? It's an 83mm rocket launcher. There's 6 SMAWs per section, which we went over earlier. All right, the ammunition available for this actual SMAW is our HEDM round, our HEAA round, our NE round, and then our inert round. So quick facts about the HEDM is it penetrates up to 7 feet of wood reinforced sandbags, 8 inches of concrete, and 12 inches of bricks. Now, the max effective range of each rocket are different because each rocket can vary from 12 pounds to 18 pounds, HEDM being that 12.9 pounds, and the NE being that 18.5 pounds, which is our heavier rockets. The heavier the rocket, the less range, the max effective range. Now, as you can see up there, you have your HEDM, which is effective up to 250 meters. You have your HEAA, effective to 500 meters. You have your inert round, which is effective to 250 meters, and your novel explosive round, your NE, which is 150 meters. All right, now we're going to talk about some considerations when using this weapon system. So we have what we call the backblast area. Now this weapon system doesn't work like your normal M16, M4, where those gases are reused to go ahead and use to actually execute the cycle of operations within the weapon system. Instead of using all those gases to go ahead and work with the cycle of operations with the weapon system, all those gases and pressure gets pushed out the back of the actual weapon system. So the backblast, right? It's all that overpressure and all those gases that makes that rocket go forward. So when we actually look at the diagram, we have a 60-degree fan that goes up to 90 meters. Now those 90 meters are broken down into 2 sections. We have your danger area and your caution area. Your danger area means that is your no personnel allowed, which means that you cannot be standing behind those 30 meters. You're gonna probably lose loss of life, limb, or sight. All right. The caution area, which would be the rest of those 60 meters, is just all those light fragmentation being kicked up, plastic being pushed back. So you still, regardless, you don't want to be behind the actual SMAW once it's being fired. All right. Moving on. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the actual rockets and give you guys some information about each rocket and how it works. Right. So first we have the Mark 7 practice round. So the Mark 7 practice rocket consists of an inert warhead and the fuses and live Mark 155 rocket motor. So all it really is, it's just like the HEDM. All they did is they took the explosive content out and they replaced it with a metal slug on the warhead. Right? As you can see, the warheads are light blue plastic. When you do a inspection on the actual rocket, you can go ahead and look, and the actual warhead's gonna be a light blue. All right. The way you can identify this rocket is OD green with 1.5-inch bands, blue on the forward end and brown on the aft end. Our second is a Mark III HEDM, high explosive dual mode. Now the Mark III HEDM, it's in the name, high explosive dual mode. So what that means, it's got a Mark 420 dual mode fuse, which determines whether it's hitting a hard target or a soft target. If it's a hard target, it's going to go ahead and detonate on impact. If it's that soft target, it's going to go ahead and barrel itself into that target. Once it reaches a certain distance, it's going to go ahead and detonate. All right. So the way you can identify this rocket is the launch tube is going to be OD green with 1.5 bands, black and yellow on the forward end, and then brown on the aft end. So next is the Mark 6 HEAA, which is high explosive anti-armament. Now you're going to ask yourself, what What is the HEAA? Well, it's in the name. We use that against anti-armor, right? Now, when we talk about anti-armor, we're talking about this rocket is only for light-skinned vehicles, right? It won't do that much damage up against a modern tank nowadays, but definitely take out one of those light-skinned vehicles or a Toyota Tacoma with a 50 cal mounted in the back. Now, the high explosive anti-armor, well, the way it works, if you look at the actual diagram, you see the actual rocket's got that long nose. So on that explosive composition, it's designed to be a cone. So when it detonates, that cone is going to invert on itself and then create a hot stream of gases, which is going to punch you through the armor. Now, the HEAA rocket is designed to penetrate up to 23 inches of homogenized rolled steel. That's effective, like I said, against more light-skinned vehicles than actual modern tanks. All right, next we're going to talk about the Mark 79 novel explosive round. All right, so with the novel explosive round, it's kind of a very cool round or ordnance that we actually use, right? So the NE warhead, same thing. It's got that Mark 420 dual mode fuse, so it determines whether it hits a hard target or soft target. The thing about what makes the NE, the novel explosive, unique is got 4 pounds of aluminized powder. So what happens is once we shoot this rocket inside that cave or bunker, all right, it's going to go ahead, skip around for a little bit, and it's going to detonate. With that initial detonation, it's going to push out that aluminum powder into the air. With that initial ignition and explosion, it's going to go ahead and then ignite the aluminum powder. Now, the more oxygen there is in that building, the more reignition is going to be. So it's going to keep reigniting and reigniting until there's no more oxygen left in that building. So what's going to happen is going to go ahead and create pretty much a hot vacuum and suck in all the oxygen and collapse that building on itself. You guys have a great example of actually watching the NE being fired. So you can go on futuristic weapons on YouTube, and then you can actually see there how an NE rocket actually works. All right. So now we're going to move into the O-251 breaching capabilities. Now we talked about the types of we're going to talk about the types of breaching capabilities that we bring. We bring mechanical breaching into that is some of our stuff that we can do as far as breaching as O-351s. Now with mechanical breaching, we use what makes sense, right? Mechanical tools. So the tools that we use is our breacher's kit. Inside that breacher's kit, we're going to have that sledgehammer. We're going to have that hooligan's tool, bolt cutters, and that rammet, right? That rammet, once you guys go out there to engineer fire effects, you guys can get a chance to actually go out there and actually see us employ this stuff. Also, you guys are going to get a chance to actually see this stuff get employed when you guys go to mount, right? Bolt cutters, same thing. Most of this stuff, I'm just kind of going to briefly go over it because you guys can get taught this. You guys will see me again at Engineer Fire Effects, which is immediately after this range, and we'll go more into depth about mechanical breaching and all the breaching assets that we bring as O-351s. All right, same thing. Explosive breaching, all it really is instead of using the mechanical means, we're going to use demolitions to go ahead and create an entrance into a place where there was no entrance before. All right. So here's some, let me give you guys some time to go ahead and look at this slide and read it. All right, again, like I said, I'm not really going to touch over too much of this stuff because most of the stuff you guys are going to get taught again during the Engineer Fire Effects, which is going to be it's going to be a lot better and more in depth, and you guys are going to get more hands-on when you guys are doing this stuff. All right, so we have here ballistic breaching. It's in the name. What we use is we use that shotgun. We use those lockbuster rounds to breaching through those doors. All right. Here in this next one, you can see the effects of ballistic breaching. You can see that throw and that locking mechanism has been defeated. All right. Like I said, in Engineer Fire Effects, we'll see. I know kind of know we're saying this, but once we get to Engineer Fire Effects, we're going to actually get to see how it is actually employed and the methods that we use for that ballistic breaching. All right, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to my colleague.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, starting to roll again. We just went over the weapons platoon breakdown, right? So with that being said, within that weapons platoon, the assets that are organic to it would be what? Those 6 T-40 Bravos, those 3 60mm mortar systems, as well as those 6 Mark 153 SMAs, whether they be Mod 0s, Mod 2s, okay? So as we transition from the weapons platoon, right, 3 weapons platoons within infantry battalion located within the rifle companies, now we're going to transition to weapons company. All right. So the 1 weapons company within the infantry battalion is broken down into 3 platoons. Okay. First platoon being the heavy machine gun platoon, broken down into 3 sections. The second platoon being the anti-armor platoon into 2 sections, and then 81's platoon being broken down into 2 sections as well. So who's in charge of the weapons company is going to be that Major 0302 as the weapons company commander, First Sergeant 8999 as the company first sergeant, the Captain 0302 is the weapons company XO, and then additionally they get a Master Sergeant 0369 as the weapons company operations chief by virtue of the amount of logistics and support required for them, right? So heavy machine gun platoon. This is a breakdown of what a heavy machine gun platoon would look like. But what we're seeing is every Victor unit across the board is breaking into some type of undoctrinal CAT or the task organization can get a little wonky, but this is what it is derived from. Okay. So heavy machine gun platoon, 28 Marines in the platoon, right? So 8 Marines per section, looking at 3 sections, each section being broken down into 2 squads. Okay. The main takeaway here is 6 Mark 19s and 6 M2A 150 cals. Okay, even though there are 12 heavy machine guns, the allocation of the Marines is to the ability to man 6 of those machine guns in whatever format or way you want at any given time, right? So they have the ability. They have 12 machine guns, but only the ability to man 6, right? Depending on the unit that you're working with. Okay, they're gonna have a first lieutenant 0302 heavy machine gun platoon commander, a gunnery sergeant 0369 heavy machine gun platoon sergeant, and then a sergeant 0331 section leader, squad leader. Okay, M2A1 basic capes, limbs. Yeah, it's a 50 cal, shoots 670 grain-ish bullets. 6 of these in the platoon. Max effective range, again, you guys will get core competencies on this. The only reason that says it's the max effective range is that's the furthest that they assessed. The human naked eye with 20/20 vision could assess 50 cal ball rounds impact, so not necessarily that accurate. But yeah, grazing fire 700, max range 6800. Again, distance X, depending on the round, depending on a lot of different things, will change, but roughly in the ballpark there. Rapid rate of fire, less than 40 rounds, or more than 40 rounds. Sustained rate of fire, less than 40 rounds. 128-pound system, if it just has a heavy pintle instead of a Mark 93. There are 13 different types of ammunition that we utilize in the Marine Corps, including the high-pressure test cartridge from the manufacturer. So you'll get more about that in the core competencies class. Mark 19 grenade machine gun. Some people call it God's gun, depending on restricted firing areas or whatever. You may or may not be able to use this, and they either work or they don't work. I'm just kidding. Take care of machine guns, they'll take care of you. All right. All right. 40 millimeter automatic grenade launcher. No, it does not fire the same 40 mics that you use in your 203s. Those are low velocities, flying at about 244 feet per second ish. These rounds, TP rounds, flying about 790 feet per second, and then the HEDP rounds flying at 442 feet per second. So don't try and stick one of these rounds to your 203. It'll be a bad day. All right. So 6 of these within the platoon, max effective and max range coincide with each other because we can see the booms all the way out to 2,212 meters, depending on target elevation and gun position elevation. All right. Rapid rate is 60 rounds a minute, sustains 40. The ECR being 15 meters. The weight of the total system is 140.6 pounds. Not that that's really the biggest consideration. It's more so the ammo. 1 can of 32 rounds is like 45 pounds. It's ridiculous. So the 3 rounds that we use here, other than the actual dummy rounds, is the HE, HEDP, and then the everyone's favorite training practice rounds, which TCOM is currently out of. So that's good news. All right. So that is the heavy machine gun platoon in weapons company. Now we're going to transition over to 81's platoon. Okay. 81's platoon is the largest platoon in an infantry battalion. Okay. You look at the battalion's biggest indirect fire, arguably biggest asset organic to the battalion, it's this platoon, right? So 68 Marines potentially in that platoon, right? You have really two sections that kind of also have their own split sections of, FDC and headquarters that kind of do their own thing. But in each section, there's 4 squads, right? So we have 881's tubes. Each section has 4 tubes and 6 Marines per tube, okay, with a section leader for each 4 squads. All right, who's in charge of that platoon is that First Lieutenant 0302 with a Gunnery Sergeant 0848, okay? The reason that we have a 0848 is we need the experience of, or we want the experience of an artilleryman to come over and use their background for indirect fires, okay? But you're still going to have the Staff Sergeant 0369s as a section leader, and then the Sergeant 0341s being the squad leaders. All right, again, 4 tubes in the section, 2 sections, total 8 tubes. Absolutely split section capable, looking for company, even sometimes platoon support, although not very common, can happen. Max effective range, 5844. The ammo available, again, HE, whether it be point, prox, near surface burst, or delay, and the ability to illuminate a decent amount of space for a decent amount of time, and then RP, or that red phosphorus. Okay, rapid rate of fire is going to be 30 rounds a minute for 2 minutes before we reach catastrophic failure of that tube. You see it smoking and it gets a little scary, but that is what it is rated for. And then the sustain rate, 15 rounds per minute indefinitely. All right, that is your 81st platoon. I'm now going to turn it over to Sergeant Townsend to talk about anti-armor.
All right, now we're going to jump right into the anti-armor platoon and the weapon systems that your 0352 anti-tank missilemen are going to be using. My name is Sergeant Townsend, and let's get this rolling. So jumping right into it, this is going to be the breakdown of your anti-armor platoon. You're going to have 2 sections. One is going to be the Javelin section. It's going to have 17 men, 2 squads of 4 teams, and then 2 Marines in each team with 8 Javs in that section. Going over to the anti-tank section, you're going to have 22 Marines, 4 squads, 5 Marines per squad, and you're going to have 8 Saber systems in this section. So who's going to be in charge, right? It's going to be that motivated 0302 infantry platoon commander, followed by the 0369 gunnery sergeant as your platoon sergeant, that 0369 staff sergeant as your javelin / anti-tank section leaders, and your motivated 0352 sergeant as your squad leader. Now, something important to note is that just because this is how it's supposed to be doesn't mean it's how it's going to be in the fleet. Due to manpower constraints, you're probably going to see some different ranks holding these billets, right? You're probably going to have a staff NCO, or excuse me, a staff sergeant as a platoon sergeant, a sergeant or a corporal as a section leader, and then a corporal or a lance corporal as a squad leader. So jumping right into the M41 Saber system, right? So it fires what we call the TOW missile. And what does TOW stands for? Tube launched, optically tracked, wire guided. What does that mean? You're launching the missile straight out of the tube. It's being tracked by the optics, so wherever you put the crosshairs at, that's where the missile's going to go, and wire guided. In the back of each missile is a large spool of copper wire that is being dragged behind the missile as it flies, and it leads back to the system itself, and that's what is receiving the signals, telling it to go up, down, left, or right. Once again, you have 8 TOWs in a section. Max effective range, 3750 is not incorrect. It's just a little misleading because the most advanced missiles we have will reach out to 4100 meters with a minimum range of 200. But depending on the missiles that you're using, it might reflect this max range and min range. And you're going to get at least 36 inches of penetration using the Saber system. So jumping right into the Javelin itself. It is a man-portable medium anti-armor weapon system. You're going to have 8 Javs in a section. Once again, max effective range is going to be 2,500 meters with a minimum effective range of 150 meters in top attack. and 65 in direct attack. Basically, all that means is there's 2 firing modes. You have top attack, where the missile climbs up to a predetermined height and then comes down on top of its target where it has the thinnest amount of armor. And then you have a direct attack, which is just where the missile comes straight out of the system and directly at its target. This is a fire and forget weapon system. So once you lock onto the target and you fire that missile, you do not have to continue to track said target. You can reload, re-engage, or displace. The missile has a guidance system that'll bring it to its target. And you're going to get at least 30 inches of penetration using the Javelin itself. So going into the backblast. In combat for the Javelin, you do not have to worry about the backblast. It is considered a soft launch weapon system. The only backblast you're actually getting is from when the flight motor engages. It kicks up some dust, some pebbles. Wear your iPro, you'll be fine. But in training, we always like to be safe, so it's going to be that 60-degree fan by 25 meters. Rolling over into the Saber, this is a much more dangerous backblast. This is definitely something you have to take into account when you're firing this weapon system. It's going to be a 90-degree fan by 75 meters in combat, and then a 90-degree fan by 100 meters in training. If you have individuals behind this weapon system when it goes off, if they're close, it might just kill them. And if not, they will, at the very least bit, get a serious concussion, or maybe some things will be kicked up by the backblast, and they'll take some shrapnel or something like that. Alright, so going into CAT. Now, due to manpower constraints, you're not going to see the anti-armor section like I displayed it to you guys. In the fleet, we just don't have enough O352s to do that. So probably what you're going to see in its place are the combined anti-armor teams. And one thing you really need to take away from this is that there is no standard doctrine across the board that the Marine Corps has pushed out in relation to the combined anti-armor teams. Each unit has their own standard SOP and how they run CAT. You'll see some units that'll have, a 50 truck, 2 Sabres, and then a Mark. Some will have 2 50s, 2 Sabres. Sometimes you'll have a 50 truck, 3 Sabres. It really just depends on your unit's SOP and what they have available to them and how they decide to run their CAT section. So don't be surprised if you go from one infantry unit to another and the way they run CAT is completely different from the unit that you just came from. And you can find these CAT sections being run on Humvees, MRAPs, and hopefully soon we'll be seeing them on the new JLTVs. And once again, you will find that anti-armor section / CAT section in the weapons company.
Okay, moving on to Scout Sniper Platoon. I am Sergeant Hughes. I'm going to be talking to you about the weapon systems organic to a Scout Sniper Platoon and where they are located within the infantry battalion. All right, so as you can see here, read the definitions. A Scout Sniper is a Marine highly skilled in fieldcraft and marksmanship who delivers long-range precision fires at selected targets from concealed positions in support of combat operations. And then the mission of a Scout Sniper Platoon is a detachment of one or more sniper teams performing the assigned task of engaging selected targets of opportunity, collecting and reporting information, or a combination of all contributing to the accomplishment of the supported unit's mission. All right, so next, who's in charge? So usually you're going to have a First Lieutenant 0203 Ground Intel Officer as your Scout Sniper Platoon Commander, okay? Sometimes you'll have a Captain, but mostly you're going to have that First Lieutenant, right? Next, as a Platoon Sergeant, you're going to have a Gunnery Sergeant 0369 as well as a school-trained 0317, all right? So he is an actual Scout Sniper as your Platoon Sergeant. And the Chief Scout will be a Staff Sergeant 0369 as well as an 0317, okay? The Chief Scout, as far as that goes, what that actually is just a direct liaison from the pigs and the hogs in the platoon to the Platoon Sergeant and the Platoon Commander. All right, moving on. The organization. You're going to usually have 8 Marines per team, all right, for a total of 4 teams. 34 Marines in a platoon and 2 corpsmen. Each team is going to be broken down with 2 M40A6s, 2 M110 SASs, and 1 Sasser. All right. Now, what we actually take out on the missions is dependent on the actual mission, right? So if we're not engaging any anti-armor threats or armored threats, then we're not going to be taking out a Sasser, okay?
So it just kind of all depends on what our actual mission set is. As you can see on the right side there, Team 4 has a GS next to them. That's going to be your SARC team, okay? The SARC team is just basically someone that kind of sits in the rear as the other teams are pushed out in their hide sites, and they're taking any information that we pass back, so reports, pictures, anything like that, taking that raw material, turning it into something tangible for the supported unit leader, all right, to look at and make mission decisions off that. Next, here are some capabilities that a Scout Sniper platoon can provide. Precision fires on selected targets and targets of opportunity, observation, surveillance, and reconnaissance, MAGTF secondary imagery dissemination system, or MSIDS. All right, so that's where we'll take pictures with our Nikons, upload them to a Toughbook laptop, edit them, and then send them back to the SARC team or back to the COC over HF radio. Okay. Counter sniper and counter reconnaissance operations, direct and adjust fire support, so directing IDF and things like that, information gathering and reporting weather and terrain analysis, your communications and retrans sites, okay? Counter IED, we can provide overwatch and security, and then act as guides to attack and support positions, so support by fires, things like that. Next, the M40A6 sniper rifle. So it fires a 7.62 by 5.1, 175 grain Sierra Match King hollow point boat tail round. Okay, Alpha Alpha 1-1. We've currently moved on to the Alpha Bravo 3-9. All right, and that has a ballistic coefficient, that BC right there, of 0.475. All right, it fires out of the Remington Arms lightweight chassis system. It's primarily an anti-personnel weapon. We're, like we said earlier, going to have 2 M40A6s per team. The max effective range is 1,000 meters. However, we can push it past that. It fires with a Schmittenbender 3-12 scope on it with a Gen 2 milled out reticle etch in the glass. That's on a first focal plane, so it's a really nice optic, really clear glass. And then it says it fires from a 5-round detachable box magazine. It also comes with a 10-round, and to be completely honest, the M40A6s seem to fire a little better with the 10-round magazine rather than the 5. Next, we have the M110 SAS, all right, the semi-automatic sniper system. That's manufactured by Knights Armament down in Titusville, Florida, right? So it's basically just an AR-10 platform that they threw a really expensive scope on, you know. It fires the 7.62 by 5.1, 175 grain Sierra Match King hollow point boat tail, all right, so the same exact round the M40A6 does. It's primarily an anti-personnel weapon, again. We're going to have 2 SASs per team. Max effective range is 800 meters, but as we said earlier, you can push it past that as long as your fundamentals are good, your shooter-spotter communication is good, and your math is good as far as wind calls, everything like that, all right? This has a 20-round box magazine, and then it has a 3 to 15 power Premier scope with Gen 2 milled out reticle etch in the glass, all right? Next, the M107 Sasser, all right? So this is a anti-material weapon primarily, okay? It fires 50 caliber Rothfuss rounds. You're going to have 1 Sasser per team. The max effective range is 1,800 meters. It's a semi-automatic weapon system, fires from a 10-round detachable box magazine, and it's approximately 32 pounds when loaded, okay? So here you can see how it's broken down, the upper receiver group, the bolt carrier group, and the lower receiver group. Usually when we are transporting this weapon system, if we're not running it as someone wants to run it as a primary, something like that, we'll have to break it down into 2 pieces usually and carry it. So 2 Marines will have to carry it at a time. And then the ammunition, as I said, it fires a Rothfuss round earlier, so a little explanation on what that is. The Rothfuss round is a 50 caliber round that contains RDX explosive charge, zirconium particles, and a tungsten steel penetrator, all right, all in that copper jacket in the tip, all right, in the projectile. So basically what happens is, let's say we have a truck out in the distance with someone driving it, right, a bad guy driving it. We're going to fire the round. It's going to hit the truck door. Let's say it hits the truck door. That RDX is going to explode and make a hole for that tungsten steel penetrator to go through and prosecute the soft target, all right? So it works pretty well, has pretty devastating effects. Here you can see the effects the ammunition has on rolled homogeneous steel. So these first 2 sheets on the left are what it will do to rolled homogeneous steel at 500 yards. All right, it will punch through 1 full inch of rolled homogeneous steel. And then this next one is what it does at 1,000 yards. At 1,000 yards, it will punch through 1/2 an inch. All right, so 0.5 inches at 1,000 yards through rolled homogeneous steel. And where we're located in the infantry battalion is H&S Company. A lot of times we'll be found in weapons company. Honestly, that all depends on what battalion you're in and how they're running things. We in 2-2 we ran it in both companies. We were in weapons for a while, H&S, and then back to weapons. So really, it's just up to the battalion commander and how they want to structure the battalion. All right. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it, and we'll move on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Droll again back here. So what we just covered was the really task organization of what an infantry TO from the TE looks like. Okay, so if we're mirroring or modeling the 5W kind of concept, we know a little bit about who-ish, we know a little bit about what, and we know a little bit about where, right? So as we expound upon this in the following core competencies classes, to really learn what are the capabilities of these weapon systems, specifications, whatever we can use and leverage in an attack planning process for an offensive, defensive, name your scheme maneuver, is going to allow us to be inherently more successful. So this should have established for you all a good foundation moving forward throughout the rest of this package. Any questions that you may have, by all means, type in the chat box. Come find myself or any one of the other instructors. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you for your time, and have a nice day.